There's something magical about the quiet moments just before sleep, when the world outside fades away and your imagination begins to wander. Tonight, let that imagination carry you to a place far beyond the rolling green hills of the Shire, where secrets older than time itself lie hidden beneath the earth. Wherever you are right now, whether it's late at night, with the stars peeking through your window, or the soft glow of twilight still lingering in the sky, we'd love to know where your journey into rest begins. Let us know in the comments below, and let's begin this adventure together. Picture, if you will, a cozy hobbit hole with a round wooden door, smoke curling from its chimney, and inside, a curious hobbit named Bilbo Baggins. Bilbo has always been drawn to stories of distant lands and hidden wonders, though he's never ventured far from home. But tonight, everything changes. While rummaging through his uncle's study, his fingers brush against something unexpected. An ancient map, brittle with age, its edges whispering of forgotten paths. As he unfurls it, his breath catches. There, etched in faded ink, is a place no hobbit has ever dared to seek, the Valley of Giants. The map speaks of towering stone guardians who slumber beneath the earth, of treasures glinting in the dark, and of whispers that dance on the wind like echoes of a long-lost song. Bilbo's heart races, torn between the safety of his quiet life and the pull of something far greater, and then he makes his choice. With a deep breath and a knapsack slung over his shoulder, he steps beyond the borders of the Shire, into a world where the trees whisper secrets, and the very ground seems to hum with ancient magic. What awaits him in the Valley of Giants? Well, that's a tale best told in the hushed tones of twilight, where every rustle of leaves and distant murmur feels like a clue waiting to be uncovered. So settle in, close your eyes, and let's follow Bilbo's footsteps into the unknown. The pack on Bilbo's back feels heavier than he expected, not from the weight of his provisions, carefully wrapped apples, a wedge of cheese, and a small loaf of bread, but from the weight of the choice he's made. The lantern swings gently from his walking stick, casting flickering shadows on the path ahead as he pauses one last time at the edge of the Shire. He glances back at the warm glow of hobbit holes dotting the hillside, their windows like golden eyes in the dusk. Then, with a quick motion, he tucks the note he's written beneath a stone near the gate, where his cousin Lobelia will surely find it. The words are simple, but his hand had trembled as he wrote them, gone to see what lies beyond the mountains. Don't wait up. The air grows cooler as he steps beyond the familiar hedgerows, the scent of wild thyme and damp earth, giving way to something sharper, wilder. It isn't long before the rustle of leaves announces another traveler, a tall, silver-haired elf leaning against an ancient oak, his eyes glinting like starlight. "You're far from home, little hobbit," he murmurs, and his voice is like wind through distant branches. Bilbo stiffens, but the elf doesn't laugh or scold. Instead, he kneels to meet Bilbo's gaze, his expression grave. The road beyond the misty mountains is no place for the careless. Shadows stir there, older than your Shire, hungrier than winter. For a heartbeat, Bilbo's resolve wavers. He thinks of his cozy armchair, of tea steaming in a china cup, of the way his front door clicks shut against the world. But then his fingers brush the map in his pocket, its edges rough against his skin, and something stubborn flares in his chest. "I may be small," he says, lifting his chin, but I've read every book on my shelf twice over, and not one of them mentioned a hobbit turning back just because the path looked dark. The elf studies him a long moment, then smiles a slow, quiet thing, as if Bilbo has answered a question he didn't ask. "Then may the stars light your way," he says, and vanishes into the trees as soundlessly as he came. Alone again, Bilbo walks faster, as if speed could outrun doubt, but the elf's warning clings to him like mist, thickening with every step. The trees crowd closer now, their trunks gnarled and twisted, and the lantern's glow seems smaller somehow, as if the darkness is pressing in. Somewhere ahead, the misty mountains loom, their peaks lost in cloud, and beneath them, if the map speaks true, lies the Valley of Giants, where the earth itself might remember the tread of Bilbo's feet, if he's brave enough to listen. The wind howls through the mountain, past like a chorus of unseen voices, tugging at Bilbo's cloak with icy fingers. He ducks his head against the sudden onslaught of rain, the storm rolling in faster than he'd anticipated. The lantern's flame sputters, threatening to drown in the downpour, and Bilbo scrambles toward the nearest overhang, a narrow crevice in the rock face, barely wide enough to squeeze through. Inside, the air is thick with the scent of damp stone and something older, like the memory of thunder trapped in the earth. As his eyes adjust to the dim light, Bilbo notices the walls aren't smooth. They are covered in carvings, deep, deliberate grooves forming shapes that make his pulse quicken. Giants, not the lumbering creatures of children's tales, but towering figures with eyes like chasms, their stone faces twisted in what might be sorrow or fury. His fingers brush the markings and a shiver runs down his spine. The runes aren't just decoration, they tell a story, a warning. Before he can decipher it, the ground shudders beneath his feet, a low groan rising from somewhere deep below. Bilbo freezes. That wasn't thunder. The sound comes again, closer this time, a roar that rattles his bones and sends loose pebbles skittering across the floor. His breath catches in his throat, the legends whispered in the Shire's quiet corners, the ones even Gandalf's books only hinted at they were real, and whatever slumbered beneath these mountains was waking. Outside, the storm rages on, but here, in the belly of the pass, the silence is worse. It's the silence of held breath, of ancient things stirring in the dark. Bilbo presses a hand to the wall, half expecting to feel a heartbeat thrumming through the rock. The runes seem to pulse under his fingertips, their message suddenly clear. This valley wasn't abandoned. It was waiting. The mud squelches beneath Bilbo's feet as he picks his way along the narrow trail, the storm's aftermath leaving the earth soft and treacherous. Then he stops dead. There, pressed deep into the wet soil, is a footprint, but not from any creature he knows. It's wider than his entire body, the toes splayed like boulders, the arch so deep it could cradle a barrel of ale. His lantern trembles in his hand, casting shaky light on a second print, then a third, leading off into the swirling mist. A shadow moves. Bilbo's breath sticks in his throat as the figure steps forward, looming so tall he has to tilt his head back just to see its face. The giant's skin is like weathered stone, moss clinging to its elbows, its hair a tangle of vines, but it's the eyes that freeze him in place, two slow burning embers, flickering with something like amusement. The creature crouches, and the ground groans under its weight. Bilbo expects a roar, a crushing grip, but the giant only tilts its head, nostrils flaring as it sniffs the air between them. His fingers fumble with the straps of his pack. Every hobbit knows the value of a shared meal, but his mother's voice rings especially loud now. Even the fiercest belly softens at the smell of fresh bread. With a shaky breath, he pulls out the last piece of limbas, still wrapped in its waxy leaf. The giant's gaze locks onto it. Bilbo holds it up, arm trembling, and whispers, "It's not much, but it's sweet as a summer apple." A moment stretches like taffy, then, a sound like boulders grinding together. The giant is laughing. It plucks the bread from Bilbo's palm, with fingers as thick as tree roots, pops it into its mouth, and lets out a satisfied hum that vibrates through Bilbo's bones. Then, just as suddenly as it appeared, it stands, turns, and melts back into the mist, leaving nothing behind but the echo of its chuckle and the lingering warmth of its breath on Bilbo's face. He sags against a nearby rock, legs jelly. The stories never mention this, that giants might appreciate a gift, or that the scariest things in the dark sometimes just want to be met with open hands instead of drawn swords. Tucking the empty leaf back into his pack, he takes a steadying breath. The Valley of Giants isn't just a place of danger. It's a place of unexpected conversations, where the rules of the Shire don't apply, and kindness might be the only map worth following. The morning light filters through the mist, painting the world in soft gold, and Bilbo wakes to find the ground where the giant stood has changed. A single smooth stone rests there, its surface polished by centuries of wind and rain. He runs his fingers over the strange markings carved into it, curves and angles that twist like roots seeking water. The language is ancient, older than the Shire's oldest oak, and though Bilbo's heart leaps at the mystery, his stomach sinks just as fast. He can't read it. The sound of distant laughter pulls his attention. Down the slope, smoke curls from a campfire, where a group of dwarves are roasting something that smells deliciously of herbs and charred crust. Bilbo hesitates. Dwarves aren't known for their patience with unexpected visitors, but the stone's riddle gnaws at him. Adjusting his pack, he marches toward them, clearing his throat loudly enough to announce his presence. The dwarves fall silent, their eyes narrowing as they take in the hobbit's muddy trousers and wind-tousled hair. Then one of them, a dwarf with a hat that looks like it's been trampled by a particularly enthusiastic goat, grins. "Well, well," he booms, "either the ground's sprouting hobbits, or you're lost enough to make a decent story." Bilbo bristles, but holds out the stone. "I was hoping someone might know what this says." The dwarf boffer, as he introduces himself, takes the stone, his thick fingers tracing the grooves. His smile fades. "Where'd you find this?" Bilbo gestures vaguely toward the mist-shrouded pass, and Buffer's eyebrows climb his forehead. After a long moment, he translates, his voice dropping to a hush. "Only the small may wake the tall." The campfire crackles. Bilbo's mind races. He thinks of the giant's laughter, the way it had vanished into the mist after taking his gift. Wake, not summon, or anger. The word prickles with intention. One of the younger dwarves scoffs. "Sounds like nonsense. Giants don't need waking, they're either stomping around, or they're not." But Boffer shakes his head. "Not everything sleeps with its eyes closed, lad." Bilbo turns the phrase over in his mind, like a pebble in a stream. The answer isn't in books or maps. It's in the way the giant had paused before accepting his bread, in the quiet understanding that had passed between them despite the difference in size. "Maybe it's not about size," he murmurs, more to himself than the dwarves. Maybe it's about. He trails off, the realization dawning like the sun, burning through the mist. Humility, the willingness to approach what towers over you not with fear, but with an open hand. The dwarves exchange glances, but Bilbo's already straightening his coat, the stone tucked safely back in his pocket. The Valley of Giants isn't just a place, it's a test, and the riddle isn't a lock, it's an invitation. The rope bridge sways beneath Bilbo's feet, each creak of the weathered planks echoing like a warning. Below, the chasm yawns wide, its teeth of jagged stone glinting in the pale morning light. He grips the frayed ropes until his knuckles whiten, forcing himself to breathe. The dwarves' voices fade behind him, cheers swallowed by the wind. As he takes another step, the bridge groans, a sound like old bones protesting, and for a heartbeat, Bilbo imagines the entire thing unraveling beneath him. Then the riddle whispers in his mind again. Only the small may wake the tall. His breath steadies. Hobbits aren't built for grand leaps or thunderous charges, but for quiet, careful movements, light as a breeze through grass. He loosens his grip, letting his body flow with the bridge's sway instead of fighting it. One step, then another. The ropes still protest, but the rhythm changes, as if the bridge itself is remembering how to bear weight after centuries of neglect. Halfway across, the wind snatches at his coat, and the bridge lurches violently. Bilbo drops to his knees, pressing flat against the planks as the world tilts. For one dizzying moment, he's certain he'll fall, but then his fingers brush something unexpected. Carved into the wood, nearly worn away by time, are more runes. They're different from the ones in the cave, softer, as if etched with care rather than warning. He can't read them, but their presence alone feels like a hand steadying his shoulder. The final few steps are the hardest. The bridge shudders with every movement, and the far side seems to stretch farther away. Behind him, a rope snaps with a crack like lightning. Bilbo doesn't look back. He leaps not with the grace of an elf or the strength of a dwarf, but with the desperate, scrabbling determination of a hobbit who's left his favorite handkerchief behind and absolutely must retrieve it. His fingers catch the edge of the cliff, dirt crumbling beneath them, and he hauls himself up just as the bridge tears free and plunges into the darkness. The dwarves' cheers are louder now, but Bilbo barely hears them. He rolls onto his back, staring at the sky as his heart pounds against his ribs. The bridge is gone. There's no turning back. Ahead, the mist parts just enough to reveal the first true glimpse of the Valley of Giants. A vast bowl of land, dotted with monoliths that might be stones, or might be slumbering figures, their outlines blurred by time and weather. The air hums not with menace, but with something deeper, older, like the earth itself is holding its breath. Boffer claps him on the shoulder, nearly knocking him over. Never thought I'd see the day a hobbit outran a crumbling bridge. Bilbo manages a shaky laugh, but his eyes stay fixed on the valley. The riddle wasn't just about crossing. It was about trust, in his own smallness, in the path laid before him. And if the bridge was the first test, whatever waits in the valley will demand more than clever feet. It will demand a heart brave enough to listen when the earth speaks. The path narrows as Bilbo and the dwarves descend into the Valley of Giants, the air thick with the scent of wet earth and something else, something metallic, like the tang of old coins left too long in the rain. The mist curls around their ankles, parting reluctantly to reveal the entrance ahead. Two towering figures carved from stone, their faces worn smooth by centuries of wind and rain. The statues loom over the pass, their massive hands resting on the hilts of swords buried deep in the earth, their empty eyes staring straight through the travelers as if they were no more than shadows. Bilbo's heart hammers in his chest, but he doesn't hesitate. The riddle pulses in his mind like a second heartbeat. Only the small may wake the tall. He steps forward, ignoring the dwarves' muttered protests, and presses his palm flat against the foot of the nearest statue. For a breathless moment, nothing happens. Then, a sound like distant thunder, deep and resonant, shudders through the ground. The stone beneath his fingers grows warm, then hot, and the glow begins a soft, golden light, seeping from the cracks in the statue's weathered surface, climbing upward like liquid fire. The dwarves stumble back as the statue's eyes flare to life, twin beams of light cutting through the mist. Boffer's hat nearly flies off as he gapes. Well, I'll be. But the words die in his throat as the giants shift, their movements slow and deliberate, stone grinding against stone like continents, rearranging themselves. The ground trembles, pebbles dancing at their feet, but the giants don't raise their swords. They don't even look down. Instead, they step aside in perfect unison, their massive forms revealing a path beyond, a passage lined with luminous moss that pulses faintly, as if breathing. Bilbo exhales, his fingers tingling where they touch the stone. The dwarves are staring at him now, their expressions a mix of awe and suspicion. He shrugs, a grin tugging at the corner of his mouth. Hobbits might not be much for fighting, he says, brushing dirt from his coat, but we're excellent at knocking. The laughter that follows is nervous, edged with relief, but it dies quickly as the group turns toward the newly opened path. The moss casts eerie shadows on the walls, and the air hums with a sound like whispered words, too quiet to understand, too persistent to ignore. Ahead, the valley stretches out, its secrets hidden in the folds of the land, waiting. The statues didn't just let them pass, they welcomed them, and that, Bilbo realizes as he takes the first step forward, might be the most unsettling thing of all. The whispers aren't words, not exactly. They're more like the hum of a tea kettle just before it sings, or the rustle of pages in a book when you're certain no one turned them. Bilbo tilts his head, straining to catch the meaning, but it slips away like smoke. The dwarves huddle closer together, their boots scuffing the moss-covered stones. Boffer mutters something about unnatural business, but Bilbo barely hears him. There's a rhythm to the whispers, a pulse beneath the sound, as if the valley itself is breathing. Then he sees it, a flicker of movement where the mist curls thickest. A shape, tall and slender, its edges blurred like ink dropped in water. The figure doesn't walk so much as drift, its feet barely touching the ground. One skeletal hand lifts, beckoning. The dwarves gasp. Don't you dare follow that thing. Gloin growls, his axe already half drawn, but Bilbo's feet are moving before he can think better of it. The figure leads him through arches of twisted stone, their surfaces etched with the same runes he'd seen on the bridge. They glow faintly as he passes, as if recognizing him. The whispers grow louder, weaving around him like vines, and for a heartbeat, he swears he understands, not with his ears, but with something deeper, the part of him that still remembers fauntling tales told by firelight, the ones about the earth singing to those who listen. Behind him, the dwarves argue in hushed tones. He's got a knack for finding trouble, Boffer admits grudgingly, or trouble's got a knack for finding him. But Bilbo doesn't turn back. The ghostly giant pauses at the mouth of a cavern, its form shimmering like heat over a forge. Inside, the darkness isn't empty. Dozens of pairs of eyes glint in the shadows, each the size of dinner plates, each watching him with quiet intensity. The air changes. The whispers stop. In the silence, Bilbo realizes the truth. This isn't a test of bravery. It's a test of trust. The giants could crush him with a sigh, could bury him under a mountain with a thought. But they haven't. They're waiting. Slowly, he reaches into his pocket and pulls out the only thing left from his journey, the smooth stone boffer translated. He holds it up, his hand steady despite the thunder of his heart. The cavern exhales. The eyes blink, one by one, and the ghostly giant bends until its face is level with Bilbo's. Its breath smells of turned soil and lightning. When it speaks, the voice isn't a sound. It's a vibration in his bones, a resonance that makes his teeth hum. You carry the key, it says, or maybe the stone says it, or the wind. Bilbo isn't sure, but the meaning is clear. The giants weren't guarding the valley. They were guarding a secret, and now, impossibly, they are offering it to him. The cavern stretches endlessly upward, its ceiling lost in darkness, but the glow of the crystals embedded in the walls casts everything in an eerie blue light. Bilbo's breath catches as he takes it all in, the way the light dances across the stone table at the center, how it turns the tiny key into a sliver of silver fire. The ghostly giant looms beside him, its form flickering like candlelight, and when it gestures to the door across the cavern, the movement sends ripples through the air itself. The door is taller than 3 hobbits stacked head to toe, its surface carved with scenes Bilbo can't quite decipher, figures kneeling, crowns shattering, mountains rising and falling like waves. But the key in his palm is no larger than his thumb, its teeth oddly jagged, as if it were made to fit a lock that fought back. He curls his fingers around it, and for a heartbeat, the metal thrums against his skin, warm as a living thing. The dwarves shift uneasily behind him. This reeks of wizard business. Gloin mutters, and even Boffer, usually the first to laugh in the face of danger, keeps his voice low. That key's too small for that door, unless it's one of those tricks you know, where the lock's hidden where you'd never think to look. Bilbo barely hears them. The giant's gaze burns into him, expectant. It's not just about the door, he realizes. It's about what opens it. He steps forward, the key's weight suddenly immense in his hand. The table hums as he passes it, the crystals pulsing brighter, and for a wild moment, he imagines the entire cavern is holding its breath. The door looms closer, its carvings shifting in the flickering light. Now they look less like scenes and more like instructions. A small figure, a hobbit, standing before a great beast, not with a sword, but with an outstretched hand. Bilbo's pulse races. The key isn't just a tool. It's a test. The giants could have opened this door themselves if they'd wanted to. They're waiting to see what he'll do with it. Behind him, the dwarves' whispers fade. Ahead, the door's surface shimmers as if it's not quite solid. He reaches out, the key trembling in his grip, and wonders, is this the moment he turns back, or the moment he becomes part of the story the carvings tell? The dwarves' voices clash like swords, sharp and sudden in the cavern's hush. That key's no bigger than a thimble, Gloin barks, jabbing a finger at the towering door. You expect us to believe it'll open, that it's a fool's errand, or worse, bait for a trap. Bilbo clenches his jaw, the metal of the key biting into his palm. Boffer steps between them, his usual grin replaced by a frown. The lad's gotten us this far, hasn't he? Or did you forget who lit up those statues like a midsummer bonfire? Dory crosses his arms. Aye, and who's to say the giants didn't let us through just to corner us here? The others murmur, shifting from foot to foot, their eyes darting to the shadows. Bilbo opens his mouth to argue, then freezes. A sound rolls through the cavern, deep and resonant, like boulders grinding in the belly of the earth. The crystals tremble in their sockets, their light flickering. The dwarves go still. Another roar follows, closer this time, and the ground shudders beneath them. Dust rains from the ceiling. Bilbo's heart pounds, but his voice comes out steady. We can't stay here. If the giants are waking, this cavern won't protect us, it'll bury us. He turns toward the door, the key raised like a torch. That's our way forward. Whatever's behind it can't be worse than being crushed under a mountain. For a breathless moment, no one moves. Then Boffer slaps his thigh. Well, I didn't come all this way to turn tail at the first growl. He strides to Bilbo's side, throwing an arm around his shoulders. The others hesitate, exchanging glances, until Gloin grumbles something about madness and stomps after them. One by one, the rest follow, their boots scuffing against the stone. The door looms ahead, its carvings alive in the trembling light. The giant's roars echo through the cavern, but Bilbo doesn't look back. He presses the key to the lock, and the moment it touches the metal, the carvings flare gold, as if the door remembers its purpose. A click rings out, crisp as a struck bell. The dwarves hold their breath. The door doesn't swing open. It dissolves, the stone unraveling like mist under morning sun, revealing not darkness, but a glow so warm it could be the heart of a forge. Bilbo steps through, and the giants' voices fade behind him, replaced by a silence so complete it hums in his ears. The dwarves trail after, their doubt swallowed by wonder. Ahead, the path glimmers, not with treasure or terror, but with something far more unexpected, daylight. Not the thin, mist-choked light of the valley, but golden and thick as honey, spilling from an archway of living roots. The air smells of green things growing. Boffer whistles low. Now that's a sight worth a few near-death experiences. Bilbo doesn't answer. He's too busy staring at the shadow, stretched across the threshold, tall, slender, and unmistakably familiar. The ghostly giant stands just beyond the light, its form solid now, its ember eyes fixed on Bilbo. It doesn't speak. It doesn't need to. The message is clear. This isn't the end of the path. It's the beginning. The key turns with a click that echoes through the cavern, like the first note of a long-forgotten song. For a heartbeat, nothing happens. Then the ground shudders violently, stone groaning as the massive door splits down the middle, its slab scraping apart with the sound of continents shifting. Dust billows outward in great clouds, and Bilbo coughs, squinting through the haze as the dwarves clutch at each other for balance. When the air clears, the sight steals his breath. Beyond the door stretches a hall, so vast its ceiling vanishes into shadow, its walls lined with towering pillars, carved to resemble giants kneeling in reverence. Between them, relics gleam in the dim light, crystal orbs the size of wagon wheels, stone tablets etched with runes that glow faintly blue, and weapons so large they could only be ceremonial. But it's the murals that root Bilbo to the spot. They spiral across every surface, telling stories in pigments that still burn vivid after centuries. Giants tending fields alongside figures no taller than Bilbo's shoulder, their hands joined around what might be a sapling or a star. A great feast where children, giant and small, clamber over tables piled with food, a council beneath an oak tree, its branches sheltering all equally. Buffer whistles, the sound tiny in the immense space. Well, that's not the sort of welcome I expected. His voice trembles, not with fear, but awe. Bilbo steps forward, his fingers brushing a mural where a giant cradles something small and fragile in its palms. The paint is warm under his touch, as if the scene lies just beneath the surface. He always imagined giants as monsters from nursery tales, creatures that stomped and scowled and left destruction in their wake. But these murals whisper a different truth, one of shared laughter, of fireside stories passed between species, of a world where size didn't dictate worth. Then the voice comes. It rolls through the hall like thunder given shape, vibrating in Bilbo's ribs, who awakens the past. The dwarves scramble back, weapons drawn, but Bilbo stands his ground. The words aren't a challenge, they're a question, one heavy with hope. Above them, the murals flicker, the pigments brightening as if stirred to life. The giant in the nearest painting turns its head, its stone eyes focusing on Bilbo with startling clarity. His throat goes dry. This isn't just a record of history. It's a memory, preserved in paint and magic, waiting for someone to listen. The answer comes to him not as a thought, but as a certainty, rising from someplace deeper than fear. Someone who remembers, he says softly. The hall holds its breath. Then slowly, the giant in the mural smiles. A gust of wind rushes through the chamber, carrying the scent of old parchment and damp earth. The relics on the walls begin to hum, their tones weaving together into something almost like music. Beneath Bilbo's feet, the ground pulses once, twice, then falls still. The dwarves are staring at him now, their faces a mix of confusion and dawning respect. Even Gloin lowers his axe a fraction. Boffer breaks the silence with a shaky laugh. Next time you drag us into an ancient prophecy, lad, maybe give us a bit of warning. But his grin falters as the murals shift again, their scenes rearranging to show a new image. A mountain cracking open, darkness pouring from its heart, and a lone figure, small, stubborn, and unmistakably hobbit-shaped, standing between it and the world beyond. The message couldn't be clearer. The giant's harmony with the smaller folk didn't end by accident. Something shattered it, and now, impossibly, the valley believes Bilbo might be the one to mend what was broken. The air in the great hall thickens as the ghostly giant steps forward, its form rippling like heat over stone. Around it, more figures materialize from the shadows, tall, translucent, their eyes glowing like banked embers. The dwarves press closer together, their weapons half raised, but Bilbo feels no threat in their gaze, only expectation. The lead giant's voice resonates through the chamber, not in words, but in vibrations that hum against Bilbo's skin. What is the strength of the small? The question lingers, heavy as the mountain above them. For a heartbeat, Bilbo's mind blanks. Then memories rush in the way his mother would lift him onto her lap after a nightmare, her voice weaving courage from thin air. the warmth of the green dragon's hearth, where farmers and tailors traded tales as equals, the stubborn set of Boffer's jaw when he'd stepped between Bilbo and Gloin's doubt. He exhales, his fingers curling around nothing. The answer isn't in books or battle plans. It's in the quiet things, the shared meals, the hands that pull you up, the stories that outlast the tellers. The strength of the small isn't in their size, he says, his voice firmer than he feels. It's in their hearts, in knowing when to stand firm and when to bend. In remembering that a single candle can hold back the dark if it's brave enough to shine. The giants go still, then slowly their forms brighten, the misty edges solidifying into something almost tangible. A sound fills the hall, not the grinding of stone or the howl of wind, but something softer, laughter, rich and deep. It rolls through the chamber like a summer storm, shaking dust from the murals. The lead giant reaches out, its massive hand uncurling to reveal a chest no larger than Bilbo's fist. The wood is dark with age, the hinges wrought in silver so fine they seem spun from spider silk. Inside, nestled in velvet the color of twilight, rests a gem, not the cold, glittering sort from dragon hoards, but something alive. Its light pulses in time with Bilbo's own heartbeat, casting amber waves across the giants' faces. For the brave, the giant murmurs, and this time, the words are clear, shaped by a voice that sounds oddly familiar, like the rustle of pages in Baggins' library. Like the whisper of seed pods breaking open in spring, Boffer edges closer, peering at the gem. Well, I'll be. It's warm as fresh bread. Bilbo reaches out, half expecting the stone to vanish like mist. But it's solid in his palm, its heat seeping into his skin, carrying with it the faintest echo of something voices. Music. The gem thrums, and for a fleeting moment, the murals around them flicker to life, not as images but as memories. He sees the giants kneeling in fields beside figures his own height, their hands joined around saplings. Hears the clash of laughter between deep bellows and high-pitched giggles. Smells herbs crushed underfoot as children, giant and small, race through rows of towering sunflowers. The vision fades, but the weight of it stays. The gem isn't just a gift. It's a key to something far older than treasure, a reminder of what happens when the tall remember to listen and the small dare to speak. The lead giant watches Bilbo, its ember eyes alight with something that might be pride or hope. Behind them, the hall's great door groans shut, sealing with a finality that echoes like a promise. The path ahead won't be easy, but for the first time since leaving the Shire, Bilbo doesn't feel like an outsider in a story too big for him. He feels like the first word of a new chapter. Bilbo's fingers barely close around the gem when a glint of gold catches Gloin's eye. The dwarf lunges toward a pedestal near the murals, his calloused hands snatching a cup so ornate it seems spun from sunlight itself. Just a keepsake, he grunts, stuffing it into his pack. But the moment the cup leaves its resting place, the hall inhales sharply, a silence so thick it rings. Then the ground bucks like a wild stallion, throwing them all to their knees. The ghostly giants flicker, their forms stretching thin as smoke in the wind, their ember eyes widening in something like sorrow. You were meant to understand. Their voices whisper through the quaking stone, then they're gone. Above, the ceiling splinters with a sound like 1,000 trees snapping, and boulders the size of ponies crash down, punching craters in the mosaic floor. A pillar topples, crushing the pedestal where the cup once sat, and Bilbo's shout cuts through the chaos. Run! The dwarves scramble, their boots skidding on loose stone, their packs jangling with the weight of panic. Boffer yanks Gloin backward as a slab smashes where he'd stood seconds before. That wasn't just a cup, you walnut-brained lout. He roars, but the rest of his words are swallowed by the groan of collapsing masonry. The exit, a sliver of daylight at the far end of the hall, seems to stretch farther away with every step. Bilbo stumbles, the gem burning against his palm, as if trying to guide him. He risks a glance back. The murals are crumbling, their vibrant scenes of unity dissolving into dust. The golden cup rolls from Gloin's pack, clattering across the fracturing floor, and for a heartbeat, Bilbo sees it clearly. Not a treasure, but a vessel, its carvings depicting hands giant and small, pouring something bright and liquid between them. An offering, a promise. Then the ceiling above the cup gives way, burying it under a tomb of stone. The dwarves don't need an explanation. The sickening truth settles over them as they sprint. Some things aren't stolen. They're given, and the valley's wrath isn't for the taking. It's for the breaking of trust. The last thing Bilbo sees before they plunge into the tunnel beyond is the great hall folding in on itself, its relics and stories erased in an avalanche of rock, as if the mountain itself is weeping. The tunnel walls shudder around them, dust and pebbles raining down as the giant's roars chase the company like living thunder. Bilbo clutches the gem tighter. Its amber glow pulses brighter with every step, casting jagged shadows that twist and leap across the collapsing stone. Ahead, Boffer's hat bobs wildly as he shoves Gloin forward, both dwarves wheezing curses between gasps. Left, Bilbo shouts as a chunk of ceiling smashes where the tunnel forks, his voice raw with urgency. The gem's light flares, revealing a sliver of passage just wide enough to squeeze through, but the walls are closing in fast, groaning like ancient trees in a gale. Gloin stumbles, his pack snagging on a jutting rock, and for one horrifying moment, Bilbo sees the ceiling above him crack apart. He lunges without thinking, yanking the dwarf backward as a boulder crashes down, sealing the way they'd come. The impact sends them sprawling, the gem skittering across the stone, but its light refuses to die. It rolls to a stop at the feet of a trembling Ori, who scoops it up with shaking hands. It's warm," he whispers, as if the stone might comfort them. Behind them, the giant's fury shakes loose another avalanche, the sound like a mountain tearing its own bones apart. Daylight, that's all Bilbo thinks as he scrambles up, dragging Ori with him. Not the murky half-light of the valley, but true, golden sun, filtering through a crack in the tunnel's end. There, he points, and the dwarves surge forward, their terror lending them speed. The gem's glow dims suddenly, as if sensing safety near, and Bilbo's stomach lurches. They're so close. The last few yards are a blur of elbows and desperate breaths. Bilbo tumbles into open air, just as the entrance implodes, the force of it knocking him face first into damp grass. For a heartbeat, there's only silence, then the dwarves coughing, the rustle of cloaks, the distant cry of a hawk wheeling overhead. When Bilbo dares to look back, the valley is gone. Not collapsed, not buried, gone. The mountainside looms smooth and unbroken, as if no door, no giants, no hall of wonders ever existed. Boffer collapses beside him, his laughter edged with hysteria. Well, that's one way to end an adventure, but Bilbo doesn't laugh. His palm tingles where the gem rested, and when he uncurls his fingers, he half expects to find it still there. Instead, there's only a faint mark, a spiral, tiny as a thumbprint, glowing amber for one fleeting second before fading like a sigh. The dwarves don't notice. They're too busy clapping each other's backs, already spinning the tale into something grander, something safer. Bilbo touches the spot once more. The valley didn't just let them escape. It let them leave, and that, he thinks as the wind carries the last echoes of stone settling, might be the most terrifying gift of all. The road back to the Shire feels different beneath Bilbo's feet, not just because the dwarves' usual boisterous chatter has been replaced by thoughtful silence, but because the very air seems lighter, as if the world itself has exhaled. The gem rests in his pocket, its warmth a quiet reminder of the giant's hall, though its glow has faded to little more than an ember's pulse. He catches himself glancing over his shoulder more than once, half expecting to see the mist-shrouded valley still looming behind them, but there's only open sky and the occasional bird wheeling overhead. Gloin walks with his head down, his pack noticeably lighter without the stolen cup. When he catches Bilbo's eye, there's no defensiveness left, just a weariness that speaks louder than words. Never thought I'd miss the sound of their laughter, he mutters, kicking a pebble. It's an odd thing to say about creatures who nearly buried them alive, but Bilbo understands. The giant's rage hadn't been mindless. It had been the fury of something precious betrayed. Boffer falls into step beside Bilbo as the first familiar hedgerows of the Shire come into view, their neat lines a stark contrast to the wildness they've left behind. "You've got the heart of a giant, little hobbit," he says, cuffing Bilbo's shoulder with rough affection. The words should feel like praise, but they settle heavily, like a coat that doesn't quite fit. Bilbo wonders if hearts can outgrow their homes, the way feet outgrow old shoes. The green dragon's lanterns glow in the distance, and the dwarves' pace quickens, drawn by the promise of ale and a proper meal. Bilbo lingers at the edge of the road, his fingers tracing the faint spiral mark on his palm. He thinks of the murals of hands, large and small, weaving stories together, and for the first time, the Shire's cozy sameness feels less like comfort and more like a door he's stepped through without realizing it's locked behind him. That night, as the dwarves snore in a pile by the hearth, Bilbo tucks the gem into his waistcoat pocket, right over his heart. It doesn't glow anymore, but he swears he can still feel it humming, a lullaby only he can hear. Outside, the wind rustles through the apple trees, carrying with it the faintest echo of stone shifting, of giants turning in their sleep, or perhaps it's just the ordinary wind. Bilbo closes his eyes, smiling to himself. Some adventures don't end when you come home. They curl up inside you, waiting. The gem looks almost ordinary in the dim light of Bag End's parlor, just another trinket among Bilbo's collection of curiosities. He sets it carefully on the mantel, adjusting it until it catches the firelight just so, though it doesn't glow as it did in the valley. It's only when the last ember in the hearth fades to ash and the clock ticks past midnight that the change begins. A soft pulse of amber light blooms from the stone, slow and steady as a heartbeat, painting the ceiling with flickering patterns like leaves stirred by a breeze. Bilbo stirs in his armchair, his pipe slipping from his fingers as the whispers return. Not the urgent, echoing voices of the cavern, but something gentler, woven through with notes that rise and fall like a lullaby. His eyelids grow heavy, and before he can reach for the gem, the room melts away, replaced by a dream of towering figures silhouetted against a star-strewn sky. The ghostly giant stands among them, its ember eyes crinkling at the edges as it kneels, bringing its face level with Bilbo's. "You have reminded us of friendship," it murmurs, and the words resonate like a plucked harp string, vibrating through Bilbo's chest. The valley will sleep, but remember us. Around them, the other giants lift their hands, not in farewell, but in offering palms upturned, cradling memories Bilbo can almost touch. Shared feasts under ancient oaks, children's laughter ringing across fields, hands of all sizes clasped around a single, glowing seed. He wakes with a gasp, the dream clinging to him like cobwebs. The gem sits dark and quiet on the mantel, but the air in the room hums, charged with something Bilbo can't name. He presses a hand to his chest, half expecting to feel the gem's warmth still there, but all he finds is the steady thrum of his own pulse. Yet, something has shifted. The weight that settled in his bones after leaving the valley, the guilt, the wonder, the unshakable sense of being both chosen and chastened, it's lighter now. Not gone, but softened, like a wound beginning to knit. Outside, the first birds of dawn begin their chorus, and Bilbo reaches for his journal, ink splattering across the page in his haste. He doesn't write about treasures or terrors. He writes about the way the giant's voice had sounded when it said friendship, like the word itself was a bridge between worlds. The gem doesn't glow again, but as sunlight spills through the round window, Bilbo catches his reflection in its smooth surface and swears, just for a moment, that the face looking back at him is not his alone. The giants are there too, their stories folded into his, waiting to be remembered. The fire crackles lazily in Bilbo's hearth, casting dancing shadows across the round walls of Bag End as he stirs honey into his evening tea. Months have passed since the valley, since the gem's light faded, and though life has settled back into its comfortable rhythm, second breakfasts, well-thumbed books, the gossip of neighbors over garden fences, he sometimes catches himself tracing the spiral mark on his palm when he thinks no one's looking. Tonight, though, the quiet is shattered by a knock, not the brisk rap of a Hobbit neighbor, but a sound like a branch tapping glass, delicate and deliberate. Bilbo nearly spills his tea. Visitors at this hour are rare, and none have ever knocked with such precision. When he opens the door, the lantern light spills onto silver hair and eyes like chips of glacier ice. The elf from the forest leans against his gate, her cloak dusted with snow despite it being midsummer. "You've been busy, little hobbit," she says, her voice laced with something Bilbo can't place amusement. She holds out a familiar scrap of parchment, its edges frayed with age. The map, his breath catches. It shouldn't exist, not after the valley collapsed, not after the giant's hall vanished into the mountain's belly. Yet here it is, glowing faintly in the elf's long fingers, but something's different. The inked lines have shifted, twisting into new contours, and where the Valley of Giants once sprawled, there's now a cluster of symbols like interlocking rings, pulsing silver as if freshly drawn. The elf tilts her head, studying Bilbo's face. "They're gone," she murmurs, "not dead, not sleeping, simply elsewhere, and they left this for you." Bilbo's fingers tremble as he takes the map. The parchment hums against his skin, warm as the gem once was, and for a dizzying moment, he hears it, the giant's laughter, distant but unmistakable. carried on a wind that smells of crushed pine and cold starlight. The elf's smile deepens. Adventure calls again, Master Baggins. She nods to the map, then to the cozy glow of Bag End behind him, its armchair still indented from his weight. Will you answer? Bilbo stares at the door frame, at the polished brass knob he oiled just yesterday, at the quilt his mother stitched draped neatly over the back of his favorite chair. Then he looks down at the map, at the new path, curling across its surface like an invitation. Somewhere beyond the Shire's borders, another secret waits, one the giants trusted him to find. His breath steadies, the corners of his mouth twitch, and just like that, the choice isn't a choice at all. He grins. The quill scratches softly against the parchment as Bilbo leans over his desk, the candlelight pooling around his hands like liquid gold. The ink flows easily now, no more hesitation, no second guessing, just the steady rhythm of a story finding its shape. He writes of stone doors that dissolve like mist, of murals that remember, of laughter that rumbles through the earth itself. The words feel too small to hold such wonders, but he presses on, weaving the tale with the same care the giants once wove their memories into the mountain. When he finally sets the quill aside, the title stares back at him from the page, The Hobbit and the Valley of Giants. His fingers trace the letters, the leather binding warm under his touch. Some stories belong to the world, whispered over tavern tables and hearths. Others are secrets, tucked into the quiet corners of the heart, where only the stars can find them. This one, he decides, is both. A draft stirs the curtains, and the candle flame wavers. Bilbo sighs, stretching the stiffness from his shoulders as he rises to snuff the light. But as his breath touches the wick, something catches his eye, a flicker of amber from the mantle. The gem, silent for so long, pulses once, its glow brief but unmistakable. Not a farewell, a promise. Outside, the Shire is still, the night air thick with the scent of pipeweed and ripening apples. Bilbo lingers at the window, watching the distant outline of the misty mountains against the star-strewn sky. Somewhere beyond them, giants walk in dreams, their footsteps echoing through the roots of the world. He closes his eyes, and the wind carries a sound like boulders shifting, like a chorus too deep for mortal ears. When sleep comes, it doesn't bring the soft, forgetful dark of the Shire. It brings towering figures etched in starlight, their hands cupped around embers that never fade. And as Bilbo drifts, one truth settles into his bones like the weight of a good story well told. The smallest things, a hobbit's courage, a dwarven cup, a gem no larger than a hazelnut, can tilt the world on its axis. The candle smokes, the gem dims, but the tale is only beginning.